Good morning. I'm Monisa Klein here at GBTA Broadcast Studio here in Orlando, Florida. It's Friday, the final day of what's been a great convention so far. And with me this morning is Mr. Otto Ilveskero, who came in from Brussels. Otto is a senior consultant with Grayling. Welcome, yes. Otto. It's great to have you here with us.
Thank you very much.
And I understand this is your first GBTA convention.
It very much is.
And how's it been?
Super exciting.
Yeah? You enjoyed it, meeting a lot of people?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's the first time in 20 months or something that we've had the chance to talk to people in person and not through, whatever digital platform.
Right. So. I've been told 3D versus 2D.
Yes, precisely.
Which is so much better, right?
Yeah, no.
Well, tell us about Grayling. What does Grayling do?
All right, so Grayling's a public affairs and comms consultancy, headquartered in London, but we have a big office in Brussels, which is where I work, doing European Union advocacy and communications for all kinds of different sectors, from travel, transport, hospitality, energy, you name it really, pharma, food. Everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I understand that you and the Grayling team have been working with GBTA on COVID-19 developments, specifically in the EU markets, right?
Yeah.
What's the general thinking, the tone right now in Europe as it relates to the pandemic? I mean, obviously it's been kind of a roller coaster, right? Up and down, up and down. So what's the latest on that front?
Yeah, so Grayling's been working with GBTA in Brussels for quite so many years now. And now, for the past year and a half, it's been all about COVID, all about the travel restrictions and everything to do with that. So monitoring, following, and also trying to influence where things are going in terms of restrictions, right? And at the start of this last year, it was quite bad. I mean, with everybody saw the images from Italy in particular, where it hit, and also then in France, Spain, Belgium, it started. It got really bad, and the vaccine rollout in particular, compared to the US, for example, or the UK, in the EU, it was very slow, and it only really picked up in summer in this year. So that's been a huge change, having people vaccinated. And so even though the case numbers are going up, hospitalizations and the death rate have been able to be minimized, which has been great. But at the same time, while things improved for about a year, we're again looking at another possibility of potential lockdowns. For example, countries like the Netherlands, Germany have now recorded the highest case numbers since the start of the pandemic. So they're looking at different ways to ensure that the society remains open as possible and sort of normal as possible, right? But at the same time, trying to curb those hotspots for
trying to do things safely, right?
Yeah. So, and with the vaccinations, we have a lot of opportunities to ensure that many places remain open, and you can still go to your workplace, maybe have a hybrid model where you're some days there, some days working from home. But there still remains concerns, and Austria, for example, just announced that they will be implementing a lockdown for unvaccinated citizens. I have no idea how that's going to be enforced. It's going to be difficult, but that's probably something that other European countries will start looking at, trying to maintain things as normal as possible for fully vaccinated citizens, and then target unvaccinated. Because at this point, it's essentially a choice for most parts, even though obviously you have exempted because of health reasons, for example, that can't take it. So there are still issues that need to be solved within that sort of measures as well.
Right. Well, that's a lot to stay on top of, because it's country by country, right?
Yeah.
And things change daily, so that's a lot to be on top of.
Yeah.
There was some great news last week, right, with the travel sanctions being lifted for the international travel, to and from the U.S., which is why you're here. Yay.
Yeah.
So what strides are you seeing with that? Are there some challenges that still remain? Maybe if you can talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the marketplace as it relates to international travel right now.
So in the European perspective, there's basically two levels of policy that we've been following. One is the framework for COVID certificates. So the EU has the EU Digital COVID Certificate, which is a binding framework for all the EU member states, all the 27 countries, in addition to which the European Commission has been working with a lot of third parties, including the United Kingdom, New Zealand, Panama, Morocco. So there's about 45 countries now in total where the EU COVID certificate is accepted, and vice versa, so mutual recognition. So if somebody with a UK NHS COVID pass, for example, can come to Europe and use their NHS COVID pass and the QR code on that one. So that has been a massive game changer when it entered into force on 1st of July this year, and sort of coincided with the really fast rollout of vaccinations, or second vaccines in particular, across Europe. But at the same time, we have travel restrictions, and that's a national competency for all the different member states. So there's some coordination on European level on what to do, but member states really want to hold on to that power to set their own rules.
Own policy,
So, for example, the EU tries to provide platforms such as the Reopen EU website, where you can have a look at what the different travel restrictions are for each European member state, and you can basically sort it out whether or not you're traveling within Europe or coming to the EU from another country, and what the restrictions are. Do you need to take a test? How you can provide proof that you're vaccinated? Those sort of questions. But it's not easy, because you can't, as an international traveler coming to Europe at the moment, you can't really trust that it's going to be the same everywhere.
Right, and every day, right?
No, it's changing all the time.
Tomorrow, right? What applies today could
I mean,
be
in
different
Brussels,
tomorrow.
in Belgium, where I live, they just introduced new restrictions on Wednesday this week, so 2 days ago.
Are you going to be able to get back home?
I hope so. I mean, ultimately, I've never been to Florida before, so I quite enjoy it here. The weather's nicer.
For sure. We're having great weather here. So, wow, it's a lot to stay on top of, and so I can see the need for the services that you guys provide. So, switching gears a little bit, sustainability has been a huge, huge topic throughout this conference. I mean, every day we've had keynote speakers, the panels, the main stage topic, the breakouts. It is top of mind here at the GBTA convention. And I know for Europe, for the EU, sustainability has been a focus for probably much longer than here in the US. So talk a little bit about sustainability right now in your market, in the EU market, and what are some things that you guys are seeing, and what are the developments on that front?
Yeah, so hoping that we have all the sort of regulatory structures in place now for the COVID, which we've been following so closely with GBTA, and hoping also that EU, for example, doesn't shut itself down for international travel, in which case we'd have to focus on that again. We really want to start looking at sustainability now, and what's the business travel role of business travel in that, in the European context. So we have the current European Commission, which the term started in 2019, late 2019. They basically just 10 days after they assumed office, put out this European Green Deal of strategies of, we're going to make Europe climate neutral by 2050. We're going to have a 55% emission reductions across the EU by 2030. So those like big targets were set then, and they're now enshrined in the law as well, with the European climate law. So there's no getting out of that. And now everything that comes from the European institutions, from the member states, kind of have to reflect that, those targets. They have to be fit for purpose. So at the EU level in Brussels, we're currently looking at this Fit for 55 package, which is not a gym membership, which is kind of what it sounds like, right? But it's something like 16 initiatives or so of completely overhauling EU's energy, transport, and manufacturing policies to make them fit for, well, 55% reductions by 2030. And this is now the big thing in town. It contains rules on sustainable aviation fuels. There's both regulation on the supply, what counts as sustainable in sustainable aviation fuels, for example. There's also for demand, setting targets for different stakeholder groups, airlines, fuel suppliers, airports. Those sort of steps. Also the EU emissions trading scheme is being expanded to buildings, for example, which would ultimately impact accommodation, for example.
Sure.
And these are work in progress. So this is now being proposed, and the legislative procedure will take 2-3 years through the European Parliament and through the member states. So there's a lot to do. There's a lot to be influenced and changed, and ensure that the voice of business travel and everybody here is heard in that conversation.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot to do, and that'll be the agenda for the rest of this 5-year term for the parliamentarians.
Yeah, and for the most part, people are very supportive, I'm sure. Right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the
everybody's
public,
on board. Yeah, the public is on board.
Yeah, awareness in general, and the willingness of
the desire,
consumers to do that, because it is a cost question as
Sure,
well.
sure.
And you can't do it just willy-nilly. You have to make sure that it's a cost-efficient transition, and that everybody's on board, that it fits the needs of other groups. Airlines, notoriously hard to decarbonize, but also necessary for the functioning of global society and economy.
Right.
So there is a need to ensure that everybody's on board, the whole value chain, in supporting that change. And at the same time, on the sort of accommodations, you have a lot of questions about heating and cooling, for example. How you're going to ensure that that is done sustainably? What's the energy use? What's the energy efficiency? Do you have windows that keep the hot air in? There's so many things that
so many factors.
we haven't really thought about before, but it also needs to be ensured that for the citizen, for the consumers, for customers, it's actually, it appears simple, because habits are difficult to change, and there needs to be convenience to it, in addition to that sort of understanding the cost and viewing it as an investment.
Right.
And in a sense, we're also, the EU is trying to tackle that last part with changes to sustainable finance as well. So trying to establish a framework where investors, banking, institutional lenders could have a common understanding of what sustainability means in different sectors.
Right.
So there are also regulatory efforts now in Europe to ensure that shift happens, and we're not just looking at what's the most cost-effective, what's the cheapest flight, for example, and what's the cheapest fuel, but also factoring in the environmental considerations by default.
Yeah. Wow, Otto, that is a lot.
Yes.
And I think you've shed a lot of light on the complexity of the issue, right? I mean, sustainability sounds all good and well, but there really are a lot of factors that you have to consider, the cost that's involved, and have a well laid out plan, which sounds like the EU is well on its way.
Yeah, and that's what we try to do as well with our job, is simplify that to stakeholders, because ultimately the fact of the matter is that policymakers rely on practitioners on any industry, be it here. They need to have.
Yeah, we got to wrap up.
Thank you for your cooperation.
So Otto, thank you so much
Thanks
for
having
spending
me.
some time. Yes, welcome. I'm delighted that you're here experiencing your first GBTA. Hope to see you again back next year. And we
Fingers
really
crossed.
appreciate you spending some time with us and enlightening us on the issues in Europe.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Otto. I'm Monisa Klein here at the GBTA Broadcast Studio.